It's over. James Franklin is no longer the head coach at Penn State University.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Breaking news here, October 12th, 2025. Penn State and James Franklin have parted ways. Well, it's not mutual, as it seems, as Penn State officially fires James Franklin. You are locked on to Penn State football. My name is Zach Seiko. I'm your host as always. Thank you so much for joining me here to react to all of this. This is an initial reaction. I have no notes. We are going to be rolling with the punches as the news, the headlines continue to unfold. So James Franklin has been fired. Terry Smith is now the interim head coach. The recruiting hits are already taking place. What now? What's next? Why did Penn State make the move now when that buyout is astronomical? We're going to try to make sense of all of it. Thank you so much. Your comments in the live chat are going to be greatly appreciated. Your questions, of course, keep it cordial, right? This is meant to be conversational. Let's talk this through. As Penn State, I did not give the odds. After they lost to UCLA, I still did not think the odds were likely because I never thought it would get to this point. Penn State truly hit a rock bottom in the James Franklin era. It's one thing to lose to Oregon. It's one thing to routinely lose to Ohio State, or whoever the juggernauts are in the Big Ten for that given season, right? That's to be expected. Penn State's 10-2. They'll never be better than that under James Franklin. But then it went to, you lost to Oregon, then you lost to UCLA, and then you lost to Northwestern. I said this the other day from Beaver Stadium. It's not like they went through a gauntlet and they lost to Oregon and then Ohio State and then Indiana back to back to back to back. It's justified. You can understand why morale is low. But Penn State had every opportunity to save its season, and they packed it in after Oregon. That is on James Franklin. James Franklin pushed the Board of Trustees, Pat Kraft, to go and spend over $3 million for Jim Knowles. Buyer's remorse, so be it. That was Franklin's decision. It was Franklin's decision to go get Andy Kotelnicki. It was Franklin's decision to push and build this roster. He thought that, hey, I have the championship roster. I just need the money. I just need the NIL. Let's go into the transfer portal. Let's go get Trevor Pena. Let's go get Amari Campbell. And this team got worse. They were one throw away from, one drive from a potential berth into the national championship. And now James Franklin is fired. 6 games into Penn State's season, 7 weeks into college football. The season was over yesterday. The season ended. I mean, honestly, the season ended for them against Oregon, which is so disgraceful. It is such a shame because this is a staff that James Franklin described as the best personnel group in his tenure at Penn State, Vanderbilt, his coaching stops. He had a roster that, aside from Tyler Warren and Abdul Carter, and obviously hindsight's 2020. So you see how forgive me, I'm losing my train of thought here. Penn State was in a position to bounce back from last season and got the quarterback, the running backs, the offensive line, key contributors on the defense, all senior guys. This was an experienced team. James Franklin described it as the best personnel group in his tenure, and rightfully so. You had a pretty good offensive coordinator, so we thought. You retained him. You got the best coordinator in the best defensive coordinator in college football, or so we thought. You got your veteran group. You got the band back together, and it cost you millions and millions and millions of dollars. It's not the fans that are just frustrated here. It's the donors, obviously, because they fronted the bill. It's the administration. It's the powers that be at Penn State. But that wasn't the deciding thing. It wasn't just, oh, you spent all this money and you wasted it. It's how you wasted it. It's how you wasted this opportunity. I have never seen such a passive, defeated's the word that I've been using, version of James Franklin. No fire, no energy, just relaxed. Why are you relaxed? Your backs are against the wall in those games against UCLA and Northwestern, and you wouldn't know it. You wouldn't know it based on the way that Franklin was behaving, the way that the team was behaving, the way that the seniors were. There's just no determination, no fire. Like I said, just a lack of energy. You don't have to be Dan Lanning, but you got to show like you're ready to fight. You're ready to scrap. And it was just season's over. It wasn't national title or bust for James Franklin. It was Oregon or bust for James Franklin. Speaking of Oregon, that's the second head coach that they've gotten fired this season. Mike Gundy at Oklahoma State, now James Franklin at Penn State after 12 years. And in the middle of the season, Penn State said it is worth the $50+ million to get rid of you now. And I said it on the field yesterday. Again, I said it can't get worse than this, right? Okay, you'll lose to Ohio State and Indiana, but surely you can't get any lower than losing to UCLA. No, it got that much worse. You lose to Northwestern at home in front of a pretty solid crowd, I must add. Now, the crowd was against you, but that stadium wasn't empty. The fans still showed up for that game. It looked like a stripe out. It looked like everything was at least status quo, even though I think the whole Penn State stratosphere was on edge. Fans, alumni, people backing the program with money, donors, the administration, and James Franklin, clearly. They were playing and coaching to lose. And that's how this transpired. So if you're wondering, why did this happen? James Franklin gave Penn State some of the best years over the past decade. And I agree with you. And a lot of people would agree with you if you said that. They won multiple New Year's Six bowl games. They got back to the Big Ten championship after what had transpired in the early 2000 teens with the sanctions and Joe Paterno being fired. And then you have Bill O'Brien. But then James Franklin, okay, Bill O'Brien's, I don't want to be here. I'd rather go back to the NFL. This isn't worth it for me. Okay, so be it. James Franklin wanted the job. And he came in and he got Penn State to a Big Ten championship in year 3. Those were the good things that he did. And then he got Penn State back to national relevance pretty consistently up until the COVID season. Penn State was always a contender for the Big Ten championship. Maybe they sneak into that 14 playoff. And kudos to James Franklin for doing that. Kudos to James Franklin for modernizing Penn State football. Penn State football and the athletic department were archaic to an extent. They were not ready to adapt with the times. And I wonder, hindsight's 2020, you never know what other candidate would have been able to go through that. But people are going to look at the on-field results and laugh at 4-21, or is it what, 4-22 at this point? I'd extend it even further. I can't think of how many one-score games that Penn State. I was trying to go back through this in my mind yesterday. Penn State, they struggle in the big game. They struggle in close games. How many times did they win a one-score game where they really should have? That I have trouble. I know. Okay, so you start rattling them off. Okay, Bowling Green, Minnesota last year, USC, but then Ohio State, Michigan, Northwestern, UCLA. That's what was inexcusable. You didn't lose to Ohio State. You lost to Oregon, yes, but you let that loss turn into 2, turn into 3 with the best amount of resources that you had in your tenure. So that is why James Franklin has been fired, because he was always pointing to, well, look what I did. Look at my resume. This is what I've given to the university. Okay? This is what we've accomplished together. All of that can be diminished. All of that is going to be thrown away because you're only as good as you're only as good as the next game. And you kept following it up with dud performances after dud performances against the lowest caliber opponents in your conference. The argument was that James Franklin didn't have enough. He didn't have enough help. He didn't have enough resources. It was James Franklin who was able to push Penn State and get Penn State to where it was. He had little to no help. And then, okay, now I'm getting that alignment. I have the athletic director on my side. I have the president on my side. You got the coordinators that you wanted, and it still wasn't enough. And not only that, you didn't even meet your regular threshold. If you had lost to Oregon and Ohio State, gotten into the 12-team playoff, we wouldn't be sitting here in the middle of October. It was the fact that James Franklin staked his career, or how he felt about his career, in that game against Oregon. That is what I will hang my hat on, is that it was Oregon or bust for James Franklin. It was Oregon or bust for James Franklin. And so here we are. Terry Smith is the interim head coach. I'm going to, like I said, this is somewhat impromptu, as guys are starting to decommit. The transfer portal actually opens up for Penn State. You might see announcements in real time that we're going to see players enter the transfer portal for Penn State. We're going to also obviously talk about head coaching candidates. Just what's next? Why right now? What's next? What can Penn State do in the meantime to figure all of this out? Because Penn State can be a national title contender without James Franklin. And that's going to be the thing. How can you do better than James Franklin? All right, so let's debate that. Can Penn State actually do better without James Franklin? That's what everyone said for the longest time. And now we're here, actually debating it, because it's a reality now. We're going to discuss all of that next here on a live edition of Locked On Nittany Lions, reacting to the firing of James Franklin. As you can tell, it's a tense conversation, and we'll get your thoughts in the live chat as well next here on Locked On Nittany Lions. And today's episode is brought to you by Mazda. This episode is brought to you by Mazda's moving the game forward, for those who believe it is not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, they move culture, and they keep moving the game forward. In a game like Northwestern, where Penn State, a game that they shouldn't have lost, I do think it is fair to recognize the players that did everything in their power to keep Penn State in this game. And I point to two performances in particular. One, Katron Allen, 16 carries, 90 yards, 1 touchdown. Should have gotten more carries in that game. He kept the game moving forward. It didn't matter to him what the scoreboard looked like or what kind of playing time he was getting. He was still pushing this team forward. Devontae Ross, 7 catches, 115 yards. Those are the types of performances that keep the game moving forward and can inspire others around you. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. That is Mazda. Move and be moved. Again, I really appreciate each and every one of you for joining me on this live edition of Locked On Nittany Lions, the past live editions, because this is part 3 of ranting and raving about this Penn State football program and how we were all bamboozled for the most part. You know, there were the naysayers that were right. Congratulations to all of you that said Penn State was, I don't think anybody foresaw 3-3, losing to UCLA, losing to Northwestern, and James Franklin getting fired. But I think there were people out there that said, yeah, they're probably going to miss the playoffs. Drew Allar's not that good. Jim Knowles isn't that good. He's overrated. The guys on there, they have some depth issues, right? Hindsight's 2020. We can talk about that too, point out the reasons why this football team, but I just can't buy that. I can't buy that. I can't buy that. Yeah, Jim Knowles may be overrated, but he's not a bad defensive coordinator. Andy Kotelnicki may be overrated, but he's not a bad offensive coordinator. Penn State made a semifinal last year. And that's why it falls on the head coach, because you let the train derail. You had a situation to where you can at least get to, again, 10-2. Oregon and Ohio State, and I guess Indiana at this point, if you would have went 9-3, hey, all three of those teams are probably better than you on paper. Fine, so be it. But it's this disaster. It's this masterclass in disaster that Penn State is now in. So I'm going to go check on social media to make sure that I am not missing any updates, because like I said, the recruiting hits are coming in, which is totally understandable. These people were bought into James Franklin, and I'm expecting it. And it's this is why Penn State should have kept James Franklin, because now they're going to lose 2026 and 2027 commits. So be it. Sometimes you have to spring backwards to go forwards. You are going to take these hits. You are going to take these recruiting losses, but it's different. The reason why this was so complicated years ago, particularly before the transfer portal and NIL, 2021. It was what? July 2021, when college sports changed forever. Genie's out of the bottle. There's no going back. Don't ask it. Don't expect it to. You either try to keep up or get left behind here. So I understand from Penn State's point of view, hey, if we are considering it, I mean, again, he was winning. So what was there to reconsider? Okay, you're not beating Ohio State, but hey, you're getting us to 10-2 and you're getting us to a New Year's Six bowl game. What is there to complain about? Not much. There's not much. You would like to be better, but there's not much to complain about. It's different now when it's a 12-team playoff. You don't need to promise a head coach 5 to 6 years of stability to turn a program around. And I'm not here to say, oh, Curt Cignetti, anybody can be Curt Cignetti. No, but that's now on the table, because you can only recruit through the high school ranks. You had to wait 3, 4, 5 years for a program to really stabilize. Now you don't have to do that anymore. You can go play college football free agency and get a program back on track in 1 year, in a year. You can turn your program around in a year. But for Penn State, it'll be interesting how like I said, they said it was necessary. I don't want to report any misinformation. I don't want to assume. I don't know how that meeting went. If there was a negotiated buyout, if he's paid in full, did Penn State really think it was worth $50 million plus to move on right now in the middle of October? Or was the meeting cordial and just said, look, let's part ways? Because I said for these weeks leading up that James Franklin holds all the cards. If he wants to stay at Penn State, he'll stay at Penn State. Well, based on his press conference yesterday after Northwestern, and honestly against UCLA and all the weeks in between, basically after Oregon, when he was really at his lowest there for this season, it seems like he didn't want to be here. That the millions of dollars, buy me out of my contract. I'll negotiate with you. I don't want this job anymore. It seemed like that. He didn't quote, when he was asked about, do you want this job or do you think Penn State's the right fit for you? And he just deferred back to, I do this for the players. I do this for the players. It didn't become about Penn State and the fans anymore. And you have to balance all of that. Yes, be there for the players. Yes, be there for their families. But remember the institution that you're representing. And it's, well, the fans and people weren't supporting me. I would disagree with that sentiment. I would disagree with that sentiment. You were going to get the fans that seemed egregious at the times that said, fire James Franklin, snake oil salesman, all that type of stuff. But when 100,000 plus still show up for Northwestern on a Saturday after back-to-back losses like that, you can't say that the Penn State fan base didn't show up for me, didn't support me, so I'm not going to show them support in return. That's just not the case. And I'm not here to say that James Franklin thought that. But if he is thinking it, you're dead wrong, my friend. If the stadium was empty, I get it. The boo birds were there and the fire James Franklin chants. They still showed up for the team. People were bought into this season. This was supposed to be the year that things were different. At least let things be the same. Things were different. Things were plenty different. And that's why we're here. Let me catch you up on and see what. So Terry Smith is going to be the interim head coach. He was the associate head coach, former Penn State football player, made plays as a wide receiver. This guy is exactly who I would want as the interim head coach. And I think for the players that do stick around, I don't know how much attrition we're going to see through the transfer portal, because I think it would actually benefit a lot of Penn State players to both the veterans and the young rising stars. It benefits them personally to play this season out to the best of their abilities. Because if you're Nicholas Singleton, you got to do it. And I feel so bad for Drew Allar, because Drew Allar is exempt from this conversation because he's out for the season with what is most likely an ankle injury. That is purely speculation, but it is a leg lower body injury. I can confirm that much. We all saw it. It's on film. But Drew Allar doesn't get to fix his draft stock. If you're a veteran, there's nothing to play for anymore. Then the season's over. Okay, no, you know what? You're right. You can't achieve those team goals. But you can still fight, you can still scrap, you can help yourself out and continue to develop and use this adversity to help yourself out for the future. If you are a young player, try to get the tape. Try to make a strong impression for the next coaching staff. If you want to step back and defer and enter the portal now, okay, fine, so be it. You know what's best for you. But I think you are better off going through the motions, practicing and trying to get on the football field for a Big Ten program that run the table. Why not? What do you have to lose? What do you have to lose? You can go UCLA and Northwestern messed up your season. Go return the favor. At least try. That's what I wanted to see from Penn State before we got to this point, was scrappiness. Just the ability, just the desire to go out there and fight and stand in the arena, and you didn't. That's why this move was made. That's why we're here. There's so many angles to go at this from, because where does James Franklin go as a head coach? Again, we're going to talk about obvious replacements for Penn State. Let's see here. So I want to read this to make sure that this is correct. So breaking news in terms of recruiting, Gabe Jenkins, who was a 4-star safety and top 150 player overall, if I'm not mistaken, has decommitted. He's from the Pittsburgh area, class of 2027. Okay. Also the other day, Kemon Spell said that he wasn't 100% committed to Penn State, even though he's more or less verbally committed at that point. He might officially have decommitted, or I guess that speaks volumes as it is. And then Leighton Von Brandt, who was borderline a top 50 overall player, he is now decommitted. He's out of the state of Delaware. So the class of 2027 is decimated. You lost Khalil Taylor, you lost Jenkins, Leighton Von Brandt, and Kemon Spell. And so the class of 2027 is done. And that was James Franklin's saving grace to an extent. Well, I have a top 5 class brewing in 2027. That is so far away. That is the least of my concerns. And you have the transfer portal. Yeah, think about the recruiting classes, Zach. How could you say that? They'll get the new coach will get other top 100 players. They'll get them from the transfer portal. Look at how Miami was able to go get players out of the transfer portal and have the season that it's having right now. Recruiting obviously factored into that, but they maximized the best of both worlds. They got the players that they needed out of the portal. They also got the recruits. They made some coaching changes that all worked. Kudos to the Hurricanes, right? So this isn't Penn State is on a direct course to be Nebraska 2.0. That they're just going to be, because that's what I was told. And honestly, that's what I bought into. That's what I believed for the longest time. Well, how much better can Penn State get than 10-2? They're Ohio State, runs the Big Ten. Oh, here's Michigan. Penn State's always the second tier team. It's not going to get any better than that. So Penn State's just not going to recruit anymore. Penn State's not going to be able to, the largest alumni network isn't going to be able to fund the program anymore and rally behind a new head coach. Yeah, it doesn't logically make sense when you think about it. I fully contend that James Franklin did what was best for Penn State to get them where they are now. He modernized the program. He helped get them in the direction that they needed to go, but he couldn't get them to the promised land. And we know this now. It is confirmed. There's really no debating it anymore. You can debate it all you want. Feel free. He might have gotten you back to 10-2. Maybe he gets you to another semifinal. Maybe. That's not going to happen now. Obviously, there's no way we'll ever know for sure. But it was never going to be national titles, number one team, undefeated. We know that. We know that for a fact, because you can't beat UCLA and Northwestern with the best roster that you've constructed. Granted, they had some injuries. I get it. But you're still, at least you're supposed to be better than Northwestern and UCLA. All right, we'll take another break here. Just continue to talk through it. Where does James Franklin go? How about we talk about head coaching candidates for Penn State? The candidate that I like, the candidate that you should like, and some other realistic options if Penn State doesn't happen to go in the direction that I think they should. That is coming up next here on this live edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is back, and FanDuel has an offer that you do not want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. That is right, $5, and you'll get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5. If it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. FanDuel gives you so many ways to play. You can build parlays, you can try player props, even follow the live lines during the games. It makes watching football even more exciting when you've got a little something riding on the action. Whether you're a casual fan or you love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. Remember, new customers can bet $5 and you'll get $300 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. This episode is also brought to you by Monarch Money. Most people can't name all of their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all of your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. Maximize your investments, increase your savings rate, easily review finances with a partner or a financial advisor, and keep a clear view of your financial health week to week or long term. Don't let this financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's right, 50% off your first year over at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. And I know I haven't gotten to the live chat, and I make a promise there, but I have so much to say because I never thought I'd be here. I thought that James Franklin would retire. I thought that this was on his own terms. And I didn't think I'd see a situation where Penn State would actually have to fire James Franklin. I never thought I'd see it. So now let's talk about what's next for both parties. Where does Penn State go? Where does James Franklin go? Because I believe that now was the time for James Franklin to move on before he really tanks his credibility. Oh, he'll just go to Virginia Tech. Do you know that for sure? After seeing him squander an opportunity like this. Again, just browsing through social media to make sure that I am not missing anything so the 2027 class, everything's done. Kemon Spell, maybe he's, like I said, I haven't seen an official announcement there, but he basically said he's not 100% with Penn State anymore. Khalil Taylor decommitted. He was the first one. And then Leighton Von Brandt and Gabe Jenkins, both quality prospects. And that's the thing. Maybe the next coach happens to get them to recommit, but that's not what this conversation's about. So let's talk about the next coach for Penn State. And again, I do promise to get to the live chat. I see we have so many comments, so thank you. And I'm going to start at the top for the people that got there first. So let me get scrolling because it's a lot and it keeps refreshing for me. Anyway. All right. So let's talk about head coaching candidates because I promised you which candidate would be my favorite. And I think of it's a slam dunk. If you want to go in this direction, if you're Penn State, because Penn State actually can be very choosy. They can go with the candidate that they want. I say you go with Will Stein. No head coaching experience. Okay, neither did Dan Lanning. Look at where Oregon is. I know Oregon just lost to Indiana. So be it. But you can't really go wrong now, can you? You can get a Dan Lanning type of rising star at coach, or get someone who's a seasoned veteran, like a Curt Cignetti. I really don't think there's a lot of bad options here for Penn State. They don't have to settle. And they get a head start on the head coaching search. They can vet candidates now. Pat Kraft can do his job and work with a team to go identify who would be that best option. In my personal opinion, it would be Will Stein. Why not go get the guy that's been second in command to Dan Lanning? Why not get the guy that is a quarterback whisperer? Because I am tired of seeing mediocre quarterback play. And I don't mean to jab. I don't mean to throw jabs at Drew. I don't mean to throw jabs at Sean Clifford, but I'm looking for elite quarterback play. Penn State has been starved of elite quarterback play since Trace McSorley. Oh, but Trace McSorley didn't pan out in the NFL. He's one of the best quarterbacks in college football history. He's one of the best quarterbacks in Penn State history. That's an objective fact. So since Trace McSorley, there really hasn't been that quarterback play that's willed Penn State to victory. They've been game managers. They've done well in moments, but they never put Penn State. This is the guy that I'm going to take my team across the finish line, even when we don't have our best. Penn State hasn't had that for a long time, since Trace McSorley. McSorley could do that. Will Stein's a QB guru. So that's what you're going to see. You are going to see somebody that is just an offensive mastermind, someone that is great with quarterbacks. If you want to check those boxes and start totally brand new and somebody that has a lot of potential, why not go with Will Stein? Why not? This is a new era of college football. Offensive guru, QB guy. He's going to be able to recruit. You might even get some Oregon players to follow him out of the transfer portal. But if you give Will Stein all the resources to succeed, I say give him 5-6 years and really start to look how quickly it materialized for Dan Lanning. So that's the home run hire that gives you the highest ceiling, and I don't think that low of a floor either. I think you will get good results one way or another. Just to name some other candidates, of course, a lot of people are going to suggest Curt Cignetti. A lot of people should suggest Curt Cignetti. Does he leave Indiana? Why I'm not going to say, hey, Cignetti, from an objective standpoint, yeah, go with Cignetti. From a realistic standpoint, hey, Indiana bought into him. They invested in him. So I don't think he's going anywhere. He's got the contract. He's got the resources. He's going to stay committed there. But he is a Western Pennsylvania guy. I would very much like that if I'm Penn State. They'll make a phone call, gauge some interest. After that, Jeff Brom, John Summerall, Ed Orgeron is going to be a name that gets thrown out there quite a bit. I don't know about Ed Orgeron, even though he's a good coach, but I like the idea of Jeff Brom. I like the idea of John Summerall. I would give Terry Smith a chance. Let's see how this team does, because was it really a James Franklin problem that they couldn't win the big game? Or is it a systematic issue? Because Terry Smith, you could actually coach your way into a prime interview here. He spent all the time he was the associate head coach for the longest time under James Franklin. You go 8-4, do the unthinkable. You win the games that you should. Nobody's expecting you to beat Iowa at this point. Nobody's expecting you to beat, especially, injuries now and the team morale being as low as it is. You rally the troops. You inspire this team to go beat Iowa. Who knows? I am not predicting it, but I'm saying you pull off those upsets against one of Ohio State or Indiana. You just put yourself at the top of the coach board for Pat Kraft and company, right in front of your boss. And I am all for I am all for Penn State players, former Penn State players, being the heartbeat of this coaching staff. I would like to see whoever the future head coach is try to retain Terry Smith, try to retain Trace McSorley, try to retain Dan Connor, Deion Barnes. It's not going to be that easy, but that's what I would like to see. I don't want Penn State to try to turn into something it's not, just because they're going through a bit of an identity issue, because where do we go from James Franklin? I think you can stay true to what has made Penn State football over the past decade plus with those players. Those guys represented Penn State very well, and I would like to still see them on staff. I think that, Dan Connor would already a bright star, rising star in the coaching ranks at linebacker just after into his first year. Deion Barnes showing that he can put talent, first round draft picks into the NFL. Just a few years on the job. Chop Robinson, Abdul Carter, first round draft picks. Penn State, you don't want to lose that. Matt Rule becomes a name of interest because, I said it on the postgame show yesterday. That is not my top candidate. That is not my ideal candidate for me personally. You want my personal opinion. Matt Rule might not be the answer, but I can see why there would be interest. He played under Joe Paterno. He's from State College. He's from Central Pennsylvania. Matt Rule would absolutely want this job. He's coached in the NFL. Granted, he didn't succeed, but you still had that adversity. You just know it's a learning experience. He made Temple look good. He made Baylor look good. He's got Nebraska on the right track. So the people that say that, Matt Rule is an ideal head coaching candidate for Penn State, you are correct. But I don't know if Matt Rule is that much better than James Franklin. We're talking about the difference between, do you want more 8-4, 9-3, 10-2, or do you want 11-1 national title contending? Ohio, be at the level of Ohio State. Going from good to great to elite, as James Franklin had said. You might have to go get that candidate that gives you that potential. Will Stein. There's probably head coaching candidates that I'm not even thinking of. I'm trying to scroll through the comments here. I've seen Ryan Grubb as a possibility. I like him as a coordinator right now. I don't know that he's necessarily the answer there for Penn State. But I don't think there's much that separates a Will Stein versus a Ryan Grubb. So we're thinking on the same page. John Gruden, no. No to John Gruden. No to Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin would not. That is a major personality conflict between him and Penn State. Matt Rule would be a better candidate than Lane Kiffin. Urban Meyer's not coming out of retirement. He's comfortable. He's comfortable on television right now. Gosh, I got to make sure that I am not missing any sort of breaking news here in regards to what's going on with Penn State, because social media right now is going crazy, as it should in the Penn State. I mean, and across college football too. Just like I said, bear with me. I'm looking for any breaking news to make sure I'm not missing anything. And I'd say update me in the comments, but there's so many comments that I'm not gonna be able to catch myself up in the comment section. So those are my head coaching candidates for Penn State. This conversation's not going to end. We're going to talk about it all week. Get other experts to discuss this situation. For those who are interested in what James Franklin's next steps are, he could retire. He could take a year off. It really seemed like he was hurting with the missed time that he was spending with family. I don't fault him if he just wants to take a step back and say, I got my buyout. I'm going to take a year off. Kind of like Dan Mullen. Dan Mullen did that, took some time off, went into TV. Now he's coaching again. I don't blame James if he does that. I think that would be the right move, because that does not look like a guy that wants to coach right now. Bill Belichick did that, but Bill Belichick, I don't think, was ready to manage a college football program, as we've seen. Different set of circumstances right there. I don't know that James Franklin's ready to get back into this. Oh, he'll just land at Virginia Tech. He'll just land at North Carolina. Will he? Is that good for both parties? I would like to see James Franklin succeed. I don't have any ill will. Like I said, he's done so much for Penn State. He's won a lot of games. Good recruiting classes, put a lot of players into the NFL. You ask nearly every single player that stuck with the Penn State football program and was either a star player to a guy that was a walk-on or didn't really materialize in terms of their athletic contributions, they will say that James Franklin's one of the best guys that they would want, the only coach that they would ever want to play for. You have Saquon Barkley, Micah Parsons. They will all say that James Franklin is a great guy. So he is. He is a great guy. But if Penn State also has to acknowledge that just because he's a great guy, just because he is a great guy doesn't mean that the results just can't happen. Penn State as an institution deserves better than, well, this 3-3 and losing to the bottom feeders of the Big Ten, because you're not that, especially with the resources that you spend. When you lose to Northwestern at home, given the investment that you had, it's unacceptable. You can't just brush that off. And to lose the locker room the way that you did, guys that, and you got to feel bad for them. You have to feel so gutted for them, because hindsight's going to be 2020. Should I have gone to the NFL early? Drew Allar, hindsight's very 2020. Yes, that has to do a lot to do with the injury, but he had first round discussions. Whether you think that actually would have happened or not, okay, that's fine. I think of Deni Dennis Sutton, Zane Durant, Zachy Wheatley, that all could have gotten a head start on their NFL careers, and they decided to come back. Offensive lineman, Banga Ioane, Drew Shelton. And it just, the season, this was the worst case scenario. I don't know that Hollywood writers could have scripted it. I really don't. Because it reached this sort of, and forgive my vocabulary if it's off, it reached this twisted apex where it all came, it wasn't a slow burn. It really came crashing down hard. Because like I said, I don't know how you could write this. I couldn't have even made, and when I say that, okay, well, it's just this Penn State team wasn't that good. They lost games. It's losing 22-21 to Northwestern at home. It's losing to this makeshift coaching staff that's on the job for 5 days and an offensive coordinator that doesn't know how to use a headset, 33 years old, and out-schemes your $3 million defensive coordinator. And he put the game plan together in 48 hours and just made Penn State look silly. It's losing to Oregon after being down 17-3 in the whiteout game. You make a comeback. You get to overtime. You lead in overtime, and then Drew Allar throws the game-losing interception on the first pass of Penn State's second overtime possession, which transpires into the, like I said, the overnight coaching staff for UCLA. And then the Northwestern game. Why is the Northwestern game even that much more intriguing? Because it's ironic how it comes full circle. James Franklin lost his first game with Penn State. I think I have this right. He lost his first game with Penn State on the road at Northwestern with a 5-star quarterback in Christian Hackenberg. He loses his final game at Penn State at home with a 5-star quarterback against Northwestern. Who could have written that? God himself. Because like I said, Hollywood writers couldn't have come up with something so, it's tragic. It really is tragic, because I don't prey on the downfall of anybody. I wanted James Franklin to succeed. I want Penn State to succeed. If that was behind James Franklin as a head coach, all right. If that's behind somebody else, which it now is, that's how it had to happen. Here's another thought that I've had about this, because if Penn State had lost to Oregon, if Penn State had lost to Ohio State and Indiana, went 9-3 and lost to the teams that it was just not better than. I know they lost to Northwestern, and so the debate is, are they even better than Northwestern? But if you lost to those powerhouse teams, it wouldn't have facilitated this. It took this kind of moment for Penn State to say, enough. We are not getting to the next step. We are not getting to the mountaintop under this leadership. And the only way that this was going to facilitate change is if Penn State actually hit this rock bottom, if Penn State hit this lowest point in the James Franklin tenure. It was not going to happen at 9-3. Well, Indiana was better. Oregon was better. Ohio State was better. I won all the other games. Who knows? Maybe they sneak into the college football playoff at 9-3. Probably not. But SEC teams tried to debate 9-3 teams getting in, so Penn State would have been on the bubble. Those are all Ohio State, Indiana, and Oregon are all national title contending teams. But James Franklin would have saved his job or not put himself on the hot seat. And nothing would have changed. Nothing would have changed. Definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result. Well, this time, here's the thing though. You got the different result. You got a much different result. You got the worst result. You got the worst possible scenario that this happened, for this to happen. So I wish James Franklin the best. I think a change of scenery would be great. And that's why you're seeing this happen now, because I think James Franklin, you could just read his body language. Get me out of here. That's what it screams. It's not, I want to do this for another 5 years. I want to do this for another 10 years. It was get me out of here as soon as possible. Even if it means at the expense of my $50 million buyout waiting for me. If he goes to Virginia, I think he'd do fine at Virginia Tech. I think he'd do fine at North Carolina. But does he want to hold off? I think he should. I think he should, because I don't know if it's right to take on another Power 4 job like this after this had happened. The way that it happened. The Penn State, the fan, it was everything. It wasn't just, oh, the fans are tired of James Franklin. The powers that be got exhausted. That's why we are here today. Where does the team go from here? Because I think about the players that the season is over, since they can't get to the college football playoff or anything like that. The team can, again, it's talented. I don't expect them to go 9-3. I don't expect them to beat Ohio State. You know, I have my doubts. I think they can be competitive against Iowa. But I obviously am going to have my doubts, and I would probably predict Iowa to win at this point. Again, I have to do more, do an actual deep dive into that matchup. But it's not that Iowa's significantly better than Penn State. So they still have a talented team, unless these guys just totally pack it in, completely pack it in and say, we're done. If guys leave the team to focus on the draft, well, that's not going to be a good look. But you never know in this day and age of college football. You got your NIL. Why risk an injury and go focus and train on the NFL? I could easily see a player doing that. I'm not expecting it, but I could see it happen, and I would understand it. No, I don't understand it. You got your money. The season, the goals that you were promised to come back and achieve, to forego your NFL future for a year, to defer it. And you probably feel betrayed. You probably feel lied to. So if a player happens to do that, if a senior veteran player happens to do that, understand it. Don't agree with it, but I understand it. The young guys can play. Okay. So if Penn State happens to start to mix up the line of Terry Smith says, hey, all the jobs are open. Okay, Ethan Grunkemeyer is the starting quarterback going forward. But let's say, Katron Allen, Nicholas Singleton, especially in Singleton's case, because I think Allen's the guy. He should be running back He should have been running back one almost all season. I don't think Singleton's had a good game this season. And what a fall from grace for him to go from 3 touchdowns in the semifinal game to, I don't even know what this has been, his senior season. So Ethan Grunkemeier's your starting quarterback. Mix up the backfield. It's Katron Allen, and then Quentin Martin gets some carries. Maybe it's Corey Smith. Cam Wallace. Cam Wallace was on the injury report, so TBD. But if I'm Terry Smith, no job safe. You got to go out there and re-earn it. We're a football team. We fight. We scrap. Do that. And he's been around for a decade plus. He's been, I mean, if I'm not mistaken, he's been here for the entire time that James Franklin has been here. So he knows the ins and outs of this team and has recruited these players. He knows them well. You need to shake something up. So nobody's other than Grunkemeyer. Nobody's starting spot is safe. Go earn it. If you want to be here, re-earn it. That's at running back. That's at wide receiver. That's at tight end, offensive line. You get my point. That's everybody on the other side of the defensive football, on the defensive side of the football. Do that because it will finally get this group to look somewhat motivated. This group hasn't looked motivated all season. Even against Nevada, you saw a little bit of fire against Nevada. But even still, it was reserved. It wasn't this burning passion. It was a struggle. It was ugly. It was not fun to watch. And then it got worse. And then it stayed worse. And then for a half of a quarter against Oregon, it looked like something was there. And then it looked worse again against UCLA. And then it looked even worse somehow against Northwestern. I thought the Northwestern game was a lot worse than the UCLA game. At least Penn State mounted. I mean, they were down 27-7 and it was 42-37 as the final, but at least Penn State mounted a comeback. Penn State blew a lead. They were winning. And all I had to do was stop Northwestern of all teams. And they couldn't. Oh, where do the coordinators go? Because I really did, this just popped up in my head. I thought Andy Kotelnicki would be out the door as well. I thought Danny O'Brien, Marcus Higgins, I thought the entire offensive staff would be decimated. And maybe it is in the coming days. I don't know. But if Penn State's going to pay out millions on top of millions to James Franklin, you're also going to have to pay out his displaced staff members too. Just know that. So it's not just $50 million potentially to James Franklin. That might have been negotiated. Who knows? But it's also paying the contracts of Andy Kotelnicki, Jim Knowles, and all of the assistants. And then you got to pay a new staff. It's not going to be easy for the next coaching staff, depending where all the money is being pushed and pulled. I don't know how Penn State's going to do this because the administration can't just say, yep, here's your lump sum of cash to everybody. It's going to have to be paid out over the course of 4 or 5 years. You're funding a stadium renovation right now, a $700 million stadium renovation. It's an uphill battle for the next coach. But once they get settled, so here's what Penn State fans, and we're going to go live again to discuss this, probably a little bit more of an informal show where it really is a dialogue between us, because I know I didn't get to the live chat in the show, and I apologize. I hope the dedicated listeners and supporters of this channel can forgive me for that, but comment section it's been crazy. I don't even know where to begin with the most part, but I see your comments and I appreciate your feedback, the nice feedback, right? But it is going to be a struggle right out of the gate for a new head coach. Penn State, the brand, will be able to offset that. It's still Penn State. I don't think Penn State's going to be at the bottom of the Big Ten with one of the best coaching prospects, whether they're established or not, going into the first couple of years of the season. Or the first couple of seasons, pardon me. Will it be 11-1 Kurt Cignetti? Probably not. It won't be something like that. It's not going to be Kurt Cignetti 2.0. Even if you get Kurt Cignetti, I think Penn State will struggle a little bit because you're not going to have all of the necessary means that you need for the transfer portal. And then if you get somebody that's really outside of the Penn State, doesn't have the Penn State connections. They're not a Pennsylvania guy. They're not a Penn State guy. So they're not a Penn State guy. They're not a Pennsylvania guy. They're not a New York, New Jersey, Ohio guy. They're outside of the region too. You're really going to have to reestablish. And that's going to take probably 3 years in itself. So year 3. So the first 2 years, I'm expecting 7-5, 8-4, because you'll still be able to fix things through the transfer portal. Maybe you do better than that and you get to 9-3, but I don't think it's college football playoff appearances for the new staff. It's because of the stadium renovation. It's paying James Franklin's buyout. It's going to come at the expense of donors. And that's and NIL. How is NIL funded? Donors. Penn State University is not paying this. It's the donors. It's the boosters. So that hurts the next regime for Penn State football. But somebody's still going to want the job because, like I said, you have to wade through 2 years of 8-4. Is that really that bad to get back to potentially get to 11-1? Don't expect Penn State to be 10-2, or 2-10, 3-9. It's not going to be that. Penn State's not going to be that abysmal. It will be over 500, but yeah, this team's clearly in a rebuild right now. It's going to go through a little bit of a rebuild process. I'm okay with that. Penn State fans should be okay with that. It's just going to take time. You have to be patient. You have to be patient. Get through those first couple of seasons, which aren't going to be the prettiest, with whomever that new head coach is. Year 3, year 4, look completely different. Look completely different. So here we are. At the at a crossroads of it all. There's so much still left to discuss, to analyze, and there's so many angles to go at this from. I'll talk about this now to briefly wrap it up because it was on my mind late after the game of how James Franklin and Penn State failed Drew Allar. And it doesn't even have to do with the injury. That's why I can take this stance now, because really Drew Allar lost it all, but he never had anything to begin with his setup at Penn State. James Franklin finally got the 5-star quarterback that he wanted at Penn State. Drew Allar is a good football player. He has the talent. I think the mental focus is very questionable, but he has the raw ability. Why did it never translate? Well, Drew Allar's just overrated. He was never a 5-star quarterback. 24/7 had him rated as the #1 overall QB when he was coming out of high school. The dude can throw the football. But there was no support system for him to develop. And that's what I'm getting at. James Franklin let Drew Allar down. You go get your 5-star quarterback, and what do? You go get 2 coordinators that don't help Drew. They're incompatible with Drew Allar. Mike Yurcich and Andy Ko, for different reasons. Mike Yurcich is incompatible with him because he can't coach and get through to Drew Allar. Andy Kotelnicki's incompatible because of the system that he runs. He helped Drew Allar get better his junior season, but still, there was just a lot of incompatibility there after you lost Tyler Warren. So incompatible offensive coordinators. That's on Franklin because he went and hired them. There wasn't a staff that made these hires for James Franklin. There wasn't a GM. James Franklin is the GM, was the GM. So you get your 5-star quarterback. You get 2 incompatible offensive coordinators for Drew. And it's that constant change because then you rotate play, you change playbooks and everything, you change systems on them. You just don't get a coordinator that maximizes Drew Allar. You get one that can work with him and make some adjustments and do these things, but you don't get somebody that is going to bring out the best in Drew Allar. You just get somebody that can adapt to him. That's not a good hire. That's not a good decision. This is part of the reason James Franklin was fired. Then on top of that, you don't get him any receivers. Okay, you had Tyler Warren the 1 year, but you didn't get any real playmakers on the outside. Oh, well, Keandre Lambert-Smith got better, and Trey Wallace is doing better. I'm not here to debate and analyze Keandre Lambert-Smith stat padding on a 7-5 team. And Trey Wallace has only had 2 catches in the last 3 games the last time I checked. I'm talking about true playmakers that we can definitively say are NFL star wide receivers. They didn't try to recruit one. They didn't try to get one out of the transfer portal, or they didn't try hard enough. And when you have a 5-star quarterback, you get him incompatible offensive coordinators. You get him in a run first, run heavy situation. Granted, you had the running backs to do it and the offensive line to do it. But you still just let the system around him. You treated him like a game manager and a liability and not somebody that can take this offense forward. Jaden Daniels had Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. 2 first-round picks in the NFL draft. Imagine if Drew just had one receiver that was somewhat like that. I'm not even saying you need a top 10 overall pick like Malik Neighbors. How about someone that's just second-round caliber or even third-round caliber? You didn't even get that for Drew Allar. But I think about that. Joe Burrow had Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. Jaden Daniels had Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. Will Howard had Jeremiah Smith. Kyle McCord had Marvin Harrison Jr. Drew Allar didn't get anything like that. Okay, he had Tyler Warren. He had Tyler Warren. But there wasn't this supporting cast of playmakers that could catch the football. It was a one-man band at tight end for one season. And people wonder why Drew Allar struggled and why he lacked confidence and why he didn't trust his receivers. People wonder just, man, I got to scratch I don't know. I have no idea how that makes any sense. Because he was treated like a liability and a game manager and not a 5-star quarterback. To add insult to injury, and I don't mean Drew Allar's injury. I'm not trying to make a pun out of that. You get the 5-star quarterback. You hire an inexperienced quarterbacks coach in Danny O'Brien to manage and develop said 5-star quarterback. You get an inexperienced wide receivers coach who has potential. He can recruit, but development is in question. He hasn't put a lot of wide receivers into the NFL. Oh, but it's at Virginia, if we just give him the resources. You took that gamble. You took that risk, not getting established counterparts at the 2 most important position coaches when it comes to developing a 5-star quarterback. So don't tell me it's Drew Allar's fault. Is he absolutely absolved and bears no responsibility? I'm not trying to make that argument. Drew Allar still, doesn't have to throw those interceptions at the end of the day. But the system was built for him to fail. It wasn't just a matter of he didn't succeed. It was built for him to fail. Run heavy offense. Treat him like a game manager. On 3rd down and 10, you're running quarterback draws, incompatible offensive coordinators. And then a quarterback's coach and a wide receivers coach that have no experience, no resume. I don't know why I sat here and believed that Allar was going to be a high-end NFL prospect because the writing was on the wall. Again, hindsight's 2020, but it was all there. And James Franklin's responsible for that. A GM did not make those hires. James Franklin chose to get Danny O'Brien. James at the QB coach. James Franklin chose to get Marcus Hagans at the wide receivers coach. James Franklin chose to hire Mike Yurcich, then fire Mike Yurcich, then hire Andy Kotelnicki. When that wasn't best for the guy you should have been building around. That's just one, again, it's the team crumbling, but it was, we don't have the players. We don't have the 5 stars. You got Drew Allar, Nicholas Singleton, and Denai Dennis Sutton. That class was the national title championship class. So it all connects, right? All the puzzle pieces connect here. Penn State has its national title window this season, looks to springboard off of a semifinals appearance, face plants, and it all stems back to mismanaging the class of 2022 and how it went. And it's not about Bo Pribula. It's not about pushing Drew to the NFL and then retaining Bo Pribula to help Kotelnicki. Yes, Pribula would have been a lot better in a Kotelnicki offense. but you still have to build a system around your quarterback. And you did everything but. I guess that's my rant here. We've gone off of the discussion about James Franklin, but we established that early in the show, right? I could keep going in circles talking about, Franklin being fired. What's the staff going to look like? I'm kind of waiting for the breaking news. Okay, so now it's official. Kemon Spell is no longer committed. Like that was surprising. That wasn't meant to be surprising. So the class of 2027 is done. It looks like class of 2026 is starting to take those punches. LeVar Keys, wide receiver, has decommitted from Penn State. I'm surprised there isn't more. Actually, that's kind of what I'm shocked about, is that there aren't more prospects that have decommitted to this point. So 2027's done. And for anybody that's worried about it, the next coach will figure it out. You can figure it out. You have the transfer portal. Different story pre-2021, which is why you wouldn't make a move like this if you're Penn State. But now you can because of the transfer portal and NIL. You can fix your roster almost overnight if you do this correctly. We're over an hour. And like I said, I never thought we'd be having this conversation. I never thought James Franklin would be fired by Penn State because I never anticipated Penn State reaching this point under James Franklin. I always thought, well, it's going to be 9-3, 10-2, and you sneak into the 12-team playoff. Maybe you win a game, you lose a game. And it was just going to be this perpetual cycle of tier 2, 10-2. I'm trying to rapid fire scroll through the comments here. I didn't even mention Kenny Dillingham. Kenny Dillingham would be a phenomenal head coaching hire. He already has Arizona State humming, but he's an Arizona State grad. So being able to get him away from Arizona State is not going to be easy. Kenny Dillingham's another one. So we'll see what ultimately happens. We'll react accordingly based on firings and hirings and rumors. Going to have plenty of guests on the show to talk about this. We are not going anywhere. We do this daily. To talk about everything Penn State related. So football is going to be at the top. It is going to be a heavy dose of football because of what is going on here between, game reactions, because there's still football to be played, but the recruiting implications, the head coach rumors, the staff rumors, what direction Penn State could go in as they get a head start on the next era of Penn State football. My name is Zach Sako. I'm your host of Locked On Nittany Lions. As always, appreciate each and every one of you for joining me on this live show. If you are new to the show, subscribe to the YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcasts so you do not miss out on any of these conversations. Recorded, live, we'll have plenty of discussions around all of your favorite Penn State sports teams. I thank you. I appreciate all the support on the show and can't wait to have more discussions around all of it here on Locked On Nittany Lions.